everybody. Welcome to Rubber City Throwdown podcast produced by Cage Thunder, the official voices of Cage Thunder MMA. And I am your host, Norm Carrero. And to my left, I've got Caged Thunder commentator Alex Henry.
What's going on, Norm? Excited for Rubber City Throwdown podcast.
Yeah, man, it's good to be back. You know, we've been talking about getting this podcast back up and running for quite some time now, quite a lot of years actually, and we just never wanted to pull the trigger. You know, it was always something. Something was always getting in the way. We just didn't have time. We didn't have the motivation, and it seemed like right now was the best time to go ahead and get back into it.
Yeah, I feel like, it makes sense right now because Ohio MMA has just really grown in the past 2 years, and with us both working in the Cage Thunder promotion, it's just such a fast-growing promotion. There's so much to talk to, and the fan base is building so much that hopefully there's a fan base that wants to listen to what we have to say.
Yeah, we didn't have we didn't have too bad of a fan base, back in 2017, 2018, 2019. A little bit of controversy, and I think we've like to grow. I think we've grown from that. We were working for another promotion that, in hindsight, was good, but when you go back and you look at it now, it was terrible for the sport of mixed martial arts. Yeah, I'm obviously not going to name what the promotion was or who the promoter was, but people who, if you know, and it just wasn't a good ordeal. And then after, once the pandemic hit and everything kind of shut down, we thought for a long time, it was a good year and a half where like there was just nothing going on. I think there was one promotion that was actively putting on fights, and I think that was Ohio Combat League. And then we just got together and we said, you know what, fuck it, let's go ahead and get back in there, start making, putting on shows. And luckily for Cage Thunder, it blew up.
Right.
And honestly, I think for the promotion itself, for Cage Thunder itself, the pandemic really helped out. Not to mention, it was a good year and a half, 2 years, where like we had these kids were graduating from high school. We had a new batch of fighters that were like secretly coming in their own, and they were training this whole time, and whatever gym was open at the time. And so when Ohio started putting on MMA shows again, I mean, we had a good year and a half, 2 years of fighters that joined the ranks.
Yeah, I mean, you got to thank the coaches that kept their gyms open during that time because of them, there were so many fighters eager to fight. As soon as a promotion was willing to put on a show, it was no problem finding fighters that wanted to fight. And it seems to be that there's still not really a problem to find fighters to fight. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, we had a ton of debuts, and I know there were a lot of critics out there that were with Cage Thunder when we first kind of got back into it. We were like, oh, all you guys have are debuts. You don't have any experience. Where are the experienced fighters?
Right.
Some people actually criticized the matchups and the matchmaking for the card, but I was like, honestly, as a fan myself, what I like to see are debut fighters, man. It's just something more of a personal preference with me, where I actually get more enjoyment seeing that inner beast come out of somebody for the first time when they first step foot in that cage. You can see all the experienced guys all you want, and you can have a fan base, and you have time to develop rapport, or you can like somebody. You see someone who's been in the sport for 5 to 10 years, and you go, man, I really like that fighter, I'm a fan. But then you see someone you've never seen for the first time, and you're like, man, I wonder if this guy's going to be a bitch.
Right.
I wonder if he's going to like put on a show. And that's what I like to see. I like to see for the, because you find out who you are when you first step into that cage. You're either a bitch or you're a beast, man. And,
yeah,
and this is the time to figure it out. And that's what I love. I love to see that switch flip and just that beast come out for the first time.
Yeah, and to those critics, I mean, if you look at this next Cage Thunder main event, both of these guys made their debuts a little over a year ago. These were 0-0 fighters. That's now a 5-0 fighter and a 4-0 fighter. Fighters that people really want to see that are main eventing. A champion in Branson already. Those were your debut fighters. Now they're main eventers. You'll never see those guys get to that point unless you watch the debuts. And, it's an amateur promotion. Obviously, we put on pro-ams as well, which is just the best that we can talk about as well. But for an amateur promotion, you want to see these debut guys because you want to see them grow to the point that they're like a Luke McMurtry or a Branson Price or, some of these other guys that made their debuts just a little over a year ago that are now really going well. A Nick Nash as well. These guys that have made their ways up in the ranks. It's great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're going to talk about some of these debut guys that are coming, that are going to be fighting on the next Cage Thunder. Cage Thunder 22, actually, it's fight week, officially fight week. August 12th here in Akron, Ohio at the Chaparrals Community Center. Tickets are already sold out. I mean, you could probably get some GA, but as far as tables and ringside and everything, those tickets are gone. We do have a pay-per-view. You can find it at CageThunderMMA.com. Again, that is CageThunderMMA.com. It's a $30 pay-per-view. And again, you can show up to the show and take your chances of getting in with general admission. You'll probably get a ticket, but if you're showing up to the show late, there's a good chance that you won't get in. Also, if you want to check out any of our other social media platforms, you can go to our Instagram at Cage Thunder MMA. You go to our Facebook at Cage Thunder 1, and you can also hit up our YouTube channel. We've got all the past cards, Cage Thunder cards, on our YouTube channel that's already been posted free. We're not charging anybody to watch past events. And you could also see some promotion videos, interviews, anything else, content related to Cage Thunder is also on the YouTube channel as well. And you could also go to the page, our Facebook page, like the page, go to our Instagram, like the page, get all your information for past and future events. Let's get into it, Alex.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So we got Cage Thunder 22, looking like with the early prelim card. We got Isaiah Jackson, Austin Smith. Now we know Austin Smith looks like it's a true debut. Now getting into the debut fighters, not a lot of information on these guys. All we have is respect for them. There's really not much to speculate or criticize, critique. We've never seen any of these guys. All we know is that they had enough balls to sign the contract, and hopefully they have enough balls to step inside of the cage for the first time.
Yeah, I as the Cage Thunder color commentator, I think it's probably harder for me than some of these UFC guys because commentating in 0-0, I have no background research besides what I decide to go out and journal, and get from their coaches or the fighters if I can get anything. So it's always kind of a shot in the dark for me, just as much as it might be for a fan watching one of these 0-0 fighters. So I give them a lot of credit because, like I said earlier, these guys are the future. Yeah. Or they're not. Or they're not, like you said. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's always fun being a commentator and commentating for the first time someone's debut because, like a fighter, you have to overcome and adapt. As a fight continues, everybody has a game plan, and then that game plan will ultimately fail at some point during the fight, and you got to adapt. And as a commentator, you have to adapt to the person's fighting style as the fight's progressing. Right. So, I do give you some credit, man. It does take a level of talent to be able to kind of analyze on the fly and see how somebody's style of fighting looks. And not to mention, you get a little bit of time at weigh-ins. Do you do the interviews with them to talk to them? And you kind of get an idea. You ask the right questions. Hey, do you have a background in wrestling? Have you played any sports in high school? How old are you? Have you done anything like this? Do you have a boxing background? So you kind of get a little bit of information. And then you get some guys, I'm not going to mention the name, but then you have some guys who are like, yeah, I take a walk in the park every single day, and that's my training. Yeah. You go, you're going to fucking lose.
That happened.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Happened.
I'm not going to mention the name.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's what happens. You get a lot of guys who, and it happens a lot, actually, where you talk to a guy and you go, hey, man, what do you do? Where do you train? I go, I'm an independent. I train in my uncle's garage. And you're like, you're gonna get
Mhm.
your ass kicked.
Yeah.
You know, and most of the time, these independent debuters who train in their cousin's garage and shit, yeah, they don't have a good time. You
No.
know, I rarely see them. I rarely see them win, and I rarely see them come back.
Yeah, they don't win. It's every now and then there's like a guy that'll say like I got into MMA because I watched like kung fu movies like from the 70s, or I watched like Dragon Ball Z, and they'll be like all right, like they're like a little mini Israel Adesanya, if you will. But for the most part, these guys that aren't in a gym are just not going to do better than a guy in a gym. And there's even people that I remember debuted telling me, I'm not in a gym right now. I don't train in the gym. And they lost, came back, said, oh, I'm in a gym now. And then they win that night. So really, the gym is all the difference for a lot of these amateur fighters that are making their debut. So I would say, if you do want to fight for Cage Thunder one day, or just make your MMA debut, try to get in the gym. They're pretty good with working around your times, because they'll stay open later. So when you get off work, you can go train. And you got to want it. I mean, it's not an easy lifestyle at all. You have to want to go to work, do your job, and then go train to not get paid. You're not going to get paid. I mean, it's just how it is, or very little depending on the promotion. So you got to want to fight. So if you're just one of these people that take the stroll in the park, you're going to lose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like when I was in the army, you have a lot of new privates that would come in and they would ask them why they joined, and it was because they liked Call of Duty. You know, that was the whole, and those guys didn't last, man. Um, and yeah, you're right. Joining a gym and being part of a gym is essential in this sport. I mean, yeah, when you get to like the more competitive, because there's going to be a point in everybody's career, amateur career, where you have to be more competitive.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just cherry pick all your fights and then expect to do well. You know, when you actually get put up against some good competition, or you see a guy who cherry picks all their fights and then they decide to go pro, and then they get their ass completely demolished. Um, and a big part of having a gym, one of the biggest essential parts of having a gym is having a training partner.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big fan of cross training, because you might be the best fighter in your gym, and then you go to another gym and then you get smashed by every single person in the gym, and then it kind of makes you question. Hey, it humbles you, and then it kind of makes you question not necessarily your training, but like you as a fighter, and then you kind of see like, okay, this is what I need to improve on, and then you can take some of the stuff that you learn and go to your home gym and you can start applying it there as well. So, but just having another person in front of you, you know, beating your ass, that makes you a better fighter. Losing in the gym makes you a better fighter.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I agree. And if you're athletic already, get in the gym. Like even if you wrestled in high school, or you did boxing as a teenager or something like that, and you're thinking about getting into MMA, get in the gym anyway, because MMA now is not what the UFC was in the early 2000s. There's people that know every part of the sport at the amateur level. They know jiu-jitsu well, they know wrestling well, they know their kickboxing well, etc. Their Muay Thai. They might not be experts at it. I guarantee you they're not experts at it, but they have a well-rounded game. If you're just with your mat in your basement, in your bag in your garage, it won't do you good. But we talk about this. Most of these amateur fighters that are coming into Cage Thunder making their debut at this point are in a gym, and there are some exceptions to that, but for the most part, a lot of these guys are training really good. And recently, in the past like 3 events, there's been banger after banger debut fights. And some of the people fighting on this card specifically were some of those people that had great debut fights. So, for the most part, there's not too many bad apples out there.
and moving on. So, Austin Smith making his debut versus Isaiah Jackson. Isaiah Jackson. 26, 5'10", 1-1. Coming off of a loss, actually, but the last time he fought was 2017.
Mm-hmm.
He had fought Al Gregoric, and yeah, he lost a unanimous decision. And when he made his debut against Casey Adams, he won by rear naked choke in 47 seconds. So, but again, that fight was also in 2017. So, coming back after 6 years,
Hmm.
essentially, um, you know, that record is almost just completely irrelevant at this point.
I agree. There's some guys that I'll interview and I'll ask them, "Are you worried about the cage rust?" And they'll say yes, and then they shock me. Nick Lute fighting for a belt was one of those guys that hadn't fought in 6 or 7 years, came back, looked great. Jake Zach, who's also had a pretty good career recently, was somebody who took some time off, came back, looked good. But at the same time, you're 100% right, Norm. You probably are going to be a brand new fighter if you haven't fought in 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, when I came back to fight when I fought Terry Neff in 2019, that was 9 years.
Yeah.
I came back after 9 years, and yeah, I mean, even though I lost the fight, I felt great, you know. So yeah, and I know like fighters like Josh Kessinger, you know, he's 42 years old, 40, 41, 42, I believe, and again, he came back after a prolonged absence to the sport, and for Cage Thunder actually is back. I think he came back. We're at the American Legion. I don't know which Cage Thunder it was, but it was definitely in the early stages of Cage Thunder, the early days. And again, he won. And he won. He came back and he won.
Yeah.
Moving on, we've got Jaron Predmore versus Austin Meager. And again, these are two names that I am not familiar with. Jaron making his debut, and Austin making his debut. So we
Yeah.
got two guys making their debuts. And
No one
again,
knows.
not much to really critique, not much to really talk about. This is a fight that, again, personally looking forward to see just because, you know, it's in the lightweight division. So, uh, moving on.
Yeah.
Austin Smith, and as I already talked about Austin Smith and Isaiah Jackson, we've got Donald Smith and Anthony Zombek. Now, Donald Smith, I believe, trains. I want to say he's actually training at the promoter Randy Jarvis, his boxing gym, Big
Oh
Dog
yeah,
Boxing.
his boxing gym.
I believe he's actually training at Big Dog Boxing, and I am pretty sure that Donald Smith is. He's not making his debut. He's 0-1, and he had lost in 2010.
Mm.
So you want to talk about ring rust? This is 13 years, and he had lost in 1 minute and 19 seconds in the very first round by TKO at Caged Madness 14. Now, if you don't know, before there was Caged Thunder, there was Caged Madness. I actually fought on Cage Madness. Actually, I want to see this. Yeah, he fought. Okay, Isaiah Chapman was on that card. I thought it might have been the same card that I fought Jared Carlisle on. That would have been some wild shit. But oh man, this early days. Keith Shin was fighting on was fighting on this
Cage
card.
Madness.
And again, Cage Madness was actually they were partnered. I believe it was Dannon and Randy Jarvis Sr.
Yeah.
And then there was a point where I believe it was Iron Tiger was kind of buying up all these local promotions in Northeast Ohio, and I think Dannon ended up selling the promotion, signed a no compete clause, and then Cage Madness went away, and then Randy Jarvis Sr. decided to make Cage Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
And after Senior retired, he handed it off to his son. So, and that's where we're at. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, that's kind of crazy. That 2010. I mean, this card. That card had Keith Shin, Nate Mango, Isaiah Chapman.
That's wild.
Oh wow, a lot of Jeremiah Watt, a lot of names, a lot of old Roger Blankenship, a lot of old names, man. Josh Farley, but the guy that he fought was Cody Ruppel.
Hmm.
And Cody Ruppel again. He that was it. That was his one and done. He never fought again. That's actually kind of surprising.
Yeah, I'll say just on this fight, it's at the heavyweight division, and it doesn't look like either of these guys are necessarily super big uh, when looking at their pictures. In terms of heavyweights, in terms of amateur heavyweights that I've seen, these are not the bigger guys that I've seen. So
Wow, I did not know this fight was at heavyweight. You're
yeah,
right. No, Donald is on my social media, and I've seen pictures of this guy, and I would not have guessed that he was a heavyweight.
yeah,
I also don't know how tall he is, so that you have to take that in consideration as well. I mean, to me he's a thin guy, at least on social media. So he might. I mean, shit, he might be like super tall. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying these guys are Cyril Gahn, John Jones, heavyweights that don't look like fat, for lack of better terms. I'm just they're skinnier looking heavyweights at the amateur level. Looks like Anthony trains out of Route 250. Route 250, I'll just say this: they got a lot of guys fighting on this card, and they have been nothing but really good. Number one to the Cage Thunder promotion and helping us, get some fighter. It's an exchange. It's an exchange. They're giving us fighters. We're giving their fighters a platform to fight, and they've been good. They've been good, and I saw those guys train, and they train intense, Norm. And it's, I wonder, they got, Cage Thunders coming in to do video and interview right on their whiteboard. And, so they knew we were coming. But I really do think that these guys really train that hard all the time. So, yeah, I'm sure this will be a good fight.
Yeah, I mean, if he's training with Andrew up there around 250, then he is definitely being put through the gauntlet. Wrestling, judo. Um, I will say that if you want to criticize 250 in anything, I want to say it would probably be their striking. If you're looking at critiques, not saying that they're bad strikers or anything like that, but I personally have always looked at Route 250 as a ground game.
Yeah.
You got guys like, Hunter Watt and Brogan Endres and Garrett Hirschberger. I mean, those guys are animals on the ground, man. I
Yeah.
mean, hell, Hunter's last fight, I mean, he dominated guy on the ground. I mean, he was taking him down. He was out wrestling him. It was out. He was transitioning to more dominant positions. I mean, it makes sense. Andrew Law is a judo guy.
Yeah.
If you know anything about Law, I've always looked at that gym as a judo gym first and a striking gym second. Whereas, like, for instance, if you look at like Apex, I will always look at Apex as a striking gym first and a ground gym second. So
Yeah, and I'm glad you say judo and not wrestling because it really is more of a judo gym in terms of just like the way that they look for their takedowns and then how they grapple on the ground. And I don't think that's disrespectful at all to say that they are more of a ground game esque gym because they're good at it. I mean, they're all good at it, and some of their fighters are also good on the feet as well. And some of those fighters are on this card that we'll talk about later on, so I'll save that. But yeah, it's you're gonna go to what your coach's strengths are usually, and your coach's job is to make sure that you're not just teaching them what you're good at. You're trying to teach them everything. But of course, you're gonna really pick up the stuff that they're good at, and that's usually a blessing if you got a good coach like Andrew Law. So
yeah, I mean, when we first started Rubber City Throwdown, Brogan was actually one of our guys that we focused a lot of our conversation around because he was a big up and comer back. I mean, back when we first started the podcast, he had just made his debut and he fought for Cage Thunder quite a bit. Um, and I remember going up there and talking with Law and talking with Brogan and kind of getting a background on him. And they're like, he's a black belt. He's a black belt in judo. He's been wrestling. He's been doing judo since he was like 6 years old, I believe. He's been wrestling since he was a kid. So ground game was always Brogan's shtick. And he's made comments before in the past, moving up in his amateur career before he went pro, that he had always wanted to get better at striking. He really wanted to showcase striking. Imagine his first loss, I believe, on an amateur level was to a striker. I actually think he got TKO'd, and that was kind of like the first, like, okay, this guy's human, um, and kind of showed Brogan's first run in with mortality, I guess.
Hmm.
But
Well, even Hunter Watt, which by the way, I mean, absolute stud. Hunter Watt's an absolute stud. I would say he's probably more of a striker wrestler, and he's one of the better fighters out of Route 250. So I think they're all well versed. But yeah, they're definitely. Anytime I'm commentating, see guys from Route 250, whether I know a thing about them, I instantly assume they're gonna be all right on the ground. They're gonna be all right.
yeah, it's safe to say that if you're fighting a guy from 250, they know what they're doing on the ground.
Yep.
Let's move on to Tyler Fry and Jeremiah Jackson. Um, Tyler Fry, I personally don't know much about. He's 1-2, coming off of a win back in 2023 April. It's like the end of April for live cage fights at Penguin City. So Made Men, I believe it'd be Made Men Promotions. I'm pretty sure that's what that at the Penguin City, and that would be a first round TKO in 1:35. The two fights that he lost were by decision. So every time I see someone that has losses, especially back-to-back losses like Tyler Fry has, if they're by decision, I want to know. Yeah, I want to know how bad it was. I mean, granted, it's not a split decision; it is unanimous. So ultimately, he lost more rounds than he had won, but it's by decision. That shows heart. That shows grit. It shows a cardio, determination. You know, he didn't just go out there and get TKO'd in 10 seconds. You know, it shows heart. And he ended up winning his third fight. So he's stuck with the sport. It means that he's training. And then you've got Jeremiah Jackson, who is 3-4, I believe.
Yep.
And Jeremiah is a tall bantamweight. He is 6'2". Okay, so you look at that and you go, okay, he's 6'2". He is a long bantamweight, and real tall, skinny guy. He is coming off of two losses. He lost to Jake Zach, which we were just talking about. Jake Zach, great ground game. He lost a split.
That was a close fight.
Yeah, it was a
Very
close fight. And then Jared Patterson. Jared Patterson's a stud, though. I've watched Jared Patterson compete for years now. He caged under 20. He ended up losing in 30 seconds, so technically 29 seconds by rear naked choke. But that doesn't mean much. I've trained with Jeremiah at Victory. I've sparred with him. I've had an opportunity to get punched in the face by him, and you know, he is not a bad fighter, and this is a very, very winnable fight for him.
Yeah, when I look at Tyler Fry, I agree, Norm. It's not a guy I know a lot about. Mainly just a Pennsylvania fighter. But what I love to see is he's active. When you're an amateur and you want to make it in MMA, just stay active. Look at, and I'll keep bringing up the guys in the main event because they're the most important on this card, really, in terms of their name value. They stayed active. They fought whenever they had a chance. And what I like to see on Tyler Fry is he lost back-to-back, stayed active, kept fighting, got that win, and now he's coming back, you know, just a few months later, not even a couple months now, and he's looking for another fight. Jeremiah Jackson, along with just the Jackson brothers, they're so fast. It's like at the amateur level, people throw with so much power, and that often will slow down their strikes, but Jeremiah specifically, he just looks so fast in there, and what helps to their advantage is him being 6'2". He's 6'2" at bantamweight, so he's going to be taller than you, and he's going to be faster than you, and he needs to be, because, I don't know, I wouldn't want to get hit in the face by him, but I would go to say that I'm sure he's not the strongest bantamweight, because he is so tall, so he's going to be skinnier, but if he's fast, and he's lanky, that's almost better than being a really strong striker, depending on how your style is. So, yeah, I think Jeremiah's good. And I think Jeremiah's hungry. He wants to win. He wants to do MMA. He's actively training. So this will be a really good fight. I'm excited to see it. In the future of the bantamweight division in the state of Ohio, just in general, looks really good right now. So it'll be fun to see just how things go out there.
And speaking of tall fighters, Gates Cook listed currently at 6'4" as a welterweight. 1-0, fought for Ego Fight Series. It's a new fight promotion, I believe, up in. Actually, I don't know if it's new or if it's rebranded. Um, Ego Fight Series. Is that up in like Upper Sandusky area? Let's find. I want to take a look at this. But he fought Jake Lee, and he won by TKO in the first round in about just under 90 seconds. And he's competing against Cameron Miller, who actually fought for Cage Thunder's, and believe it was the last Cage Thunder, and
Yep.
he lost by I want to say it was a submission, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll talk about Cameron Miller. He made his debut, and he's one of these guys that came out so aggressive, like overly aggressive. And I always wonder when I see that, it's like, how much sparring did you do? Or who are you sparring with, as well? You know, you got to have good training partners. Uh, and I'm sure now coming back, especially only 2 months after his last fight, he's going to be way more controlled. He better be. I mean, I'm expecting him to be way more controlled. I want to see a good fight. I want to see him succeed. So he'll probably be more controlled. But yeah, 6'4" welterweight, Gates Cook, love to see that. And speaking of staying active, when he got his debut win, it was only 2 weeks ago, Norm. It was 2 weeks ago and 3 days ago. So
Wow, I wasn't even.
yeah,
Was it June 17th?
yeah. I mean, that's turnaround time right there. That's that UFC Fight Night turnaround right there. So good for you, Gates Cook.
Yeah, no, you like to see it. I'm looking forward to seeing this fight. So we saw Cameron Miller fight in the last card. I have not seen Gates Cook fight. I'm actually really interested in meeting him and seeing him fight for the first time in Cage Thunder.
Yeah.
Moving on, we have Brandon Seaman and Elijah Jackson. Again, I have trained with Elijah. Brandon, on the other hand, I do not know.
Yeah, I believe Brandon Siemens was making his debut here against the 1-0 Elijah Jackson, and Elijah Jackson just looked so good in that debut fight. I mean, there's guys that make their debut and they win, because maybe they're fighting another debut or an 0-1, so they were just the better inexperienced fighter, which is not a diss in any mean. It's just a fact. But Elijah Jackson didn't look like one of those inexperienced debut fighters. It looked like he had maybe had a couple fights before, and he looked really good.
Yeah, he's young. He's hungry. He's 25 years old. He's a featherweight, listed at 5'10". Like I said, I had an opportunity to have him to get punched in the face a couple times at Victory MMA, and he's a promising featherweight in the amateur division. As long as he stays healthy and he can keep his mind right, he can, like every fighter, especially not just amateur but professional fighter as well. As long as you can keep a good mental game going and take care of your mental health, and your home life is good, and you don't let your home life affect your training, and as long as you can kind of conquer that, I think he's going to be a very promising featherweight in the amateur division
Yep.
here in the next couple of years.
100% agree.
Let's talk about David Music and David Leisure. This is all right. So this is very interesting fight for me. I'm conflicted. Uh, let me start with Music. Let me start with David. David Music. He is 3-1. He's coming off of a loss, but that loss was a title fight. So he started his amateur career 3-0, beating Cameron Moore, Bryce Spoon, and Bob Price. And the methods of those wins were round one TKO, round two TKO, and then a third round decision, all at featherweight. Well, sorry, he made his debut at bantamweight, but the next two fights were featherweight, so he actually jumped up in a weight class, losing at bantamweight uh, to De'Aaron Stokes, and that was a title fight, round one TKO in a minute and 44 seconds. Now, David Leisure, on the other hand, I actually I cornered this kid at BCM when he made his debut.
Wow.
So when you corner somebody and you're not supposed to corner them, like you're just kind of there and they don't have anybody. The, remember, I just got done talking about independent fighters. Typically, an independent fighter doesn't have a camp, they don't have training partners, they don't have a coach, which often means they don't have cornermen. I have cornered so many of these guys. David Leisure was the first one that I ever cornered that won.
Mm.
And he won in pretty convincing fashion. I mean, he came to me and he goes, "My team doesn't want me fighting. They didn't want me to fight. They know I'm here, but this kid had no support." Now, I'm not trying to diss his team because obviously his team is now standing behind him and he's getting the proper training that he needs and he's getting the support that he needs. But this kid had no support from his coaches, from his team, nothing. This kid told me that they didn't even want him fighting. And he said, "Fuck it, I'm fighting anyway." And he wins by guillotine choke. And I immediately just this kid forgot his mouthpiece like minutes before his name got called. And I sprinted like a record time 400-meter run because we had to they drove us to the cage from the locker room at BCM there in Mansfield. So like I had to run back, grab his mouthpiece, and I'm like, we're like telling Jake Digman, the ring announcer, we're like, "Hey, just stall for time. I've got it," I mean, everything was looking like this kid was going to lose. Everything, from the way that he looked, from his backstory, the no support, he didn't have a gym behind him, he was forgetting his mouthpiece, obviously his nerves were getting in the way. He goes in there and he wins. So instantly I built rapport with this kid. I had like an instant connection with this kid. I added him to social media, was congratulated him. And then Scott Corbin, our matchmaker, picks him up for his second fight. And he ends up fighting Damon Stewart. And he ends up winning round one by TKO. And we're like, okay, like, let's see what this kid can fucking do, right? Personally, I think this is the first test that David Leisure is going to have. Whether people choose to accept it, understand it, this is a big fight and a big step up in competition for Leisure. David Music is not somebody who is going to roll over lightly and he's going to get his ass beat. I promise you that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have been wrong many times in this sport. I don't typically like to make predictions. I'm not going to make a prediction for this fight. But this is going to be a tough fight for David Leisure. And I'm really looking forward to seeing if he can pull that inner beast out and put on a show.
Yeah, Sweet Chin Music is the nickname, which, I mean, gotta love the nickname. A little HBK reference, Shawn Michaels reference. I assume. If not, that's just, what a coincidence.
I love that nickname.
Yeah, awesome. You gotta love when they go off the last name. When you make your nickname Rock and Roller, Josh Rock and Roller, and it just flows. David Sweet Chin Music. It's nice. That's besides the point, though, Norm. But yeah, David Music, he's really good. The thing that it really hasn't hurt him too hard in this career. I mean, I'm sure it makes training difficult, and your plan has to be more precise. Is height. He's and it's not even that he's a shorter bantamweight either, but he's fighting a pretty taller bantamweight here with David Leisure, and David Leisure. It's like he's such a surprisingly all right fighter. He really is, Norm. I think you really hit it on the nose with him. I remember interviewing him. He was very respectful, And I remember him making his way to the cage at this last Cage Thunder, and he had a good fight. He really did. He's scrappy. He's very scrappy looking, and that's okay. If you're good at it, that's okay. And he was decent. It'll 100% be his biggest test. I 100% agree with you. The one thing I would say for David Leisure is I hope this is the best he's ever been. You're coming off 2 wins in a row. You've stayed active. You've continued to train and train and train. Hopefully, your team is helping you out more and more and more. So, this being hopefully the best David Leisure we've seen yet versus David Music coming off of a loss, this will be a really good fight because David Music's going to want to get back on track, maybe look for another title, getting closer to a pro career, and then David Leisure obviously wants to keep his 0. So yeah, this is a really exciting fight, and I'm here for it. Sweet Chin Music.
Yeah, I mean, Sprawn and Brawn, I believe that's where he's at.
Yep.
Matt Adams is even there, and Matt Adams is actually going to be the guest commentator. He's going to be joining you on the commentating booth for the entirety of the show because, and we'll be talking about him here, but the guy that he's replacing, Brandon Billeter, decided to take a short notice fight.
Short notice.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that fight soon. It's a little bit higher up in the fight card, but yeah, Sprawn and Braun, man, them guys up there are doing great things. They have it's not a big team, but you don't have to have a big fight team to produce good fighters. You just have to be good with the people that are around you. They have a wide variety, a big range of fighters that are there. And then so far, they're doing great things there. They're not doing anything wrong, and they're producing some decent fighters for Cage Thunder.
And I like the way they fight, Norm. They fight like they're tough, and you gotta be tough. It's MMA. Some of these guys, I see them go into their corner, and they're crying. And I'm like, stop crying. You're an MMA fighter. You're not allowed to cry. You can cry outside the cage, but don't cry while you're fighting. But these guys are tough. They're tough cookies, and I don't know. I remember, as a wrestler, when we would wrestle certain schools, they were just tougher. It didn't mean they were always better, but they were always tougher, and you never wanted to fight the tougher schools, where it's just got to be how they train. It's got to be how they train. I don't know how they train. I've never talked to Sprawlin' and Brawlin' about their weekly practices. I've never been there, but I'm sure they have a really tough training regimen because these guys are tough.
Well, speaking of tough, we got a pretty tough heavyweight match that we're going to be talking about next with Jeremy Riley and Matt Beal. Now, you know a little bit of Matt Beal. You spent some time at Route 250, and you got a chance to see him. I know a little bit about Jeremy Riley because I've trained with Jeremy Riley. I actually cornered Jeremy at his debut fight when he fought Foster Eberle. So speaking of tough, let's start with Jeremy. Jeremy, they call him undead for a reason, man. This guy just keeps moving forward. You can punch him in the face and punch him in the face, and he's going to keep moving forward. If he didn't break his foot against Devin Blythewood, he would have still been walking. He would have still been moving forward in that fight as well. But Jeremy's ability to take damage, it's not necessarily a good thing because the longevity of his career, it's going to be a short-lived career for the most part, but his ability to take damage is uncanny. I love it. He'll get punched in the face. He'll keep moving forward. It doesn't even matter if he's in bad shape. He took his first fight against Foster with a month of I don't even think it was a month of training. The entire Apex fight team was actually in a different, I want to say they were in a different state. I believe they're in Alabama competing, and I was here, and Brian, the coach of Apex, calls me up and goes, hey, I need you to we just took a fight against Foster, Jeremy Riley. I know you've never met him before because I haven't even met Jeremy yet. He goes, I need you to go to Chaparrals and corner him. And I did. I sat in his corner for 3 rounds, and I watched that probably one of the most entertaining heavyweight fights that I've seen in quite a bit take place and unfold. And even though he looked so uncoordinated and out of shape, he still was moving forward. He was still taking damage. He was still throwing punches. I think he rocked Foster at one point. He took him down in the second round. There was a moment in that fight where we were like, holy shit, he can actually win this. And it wasn't one of those fights that everybody kind of looked at and was like, oh yeah, he's gonna win. No, like this was supposed to be a give me fight for Foster. This was I want to say this was a last minute fight. I think the fight had fell through for Foster and they were trying to find a replacement. And Jeremy just stepped and was like, I'll do it. And we're like, why? And this was supposed to be a gimme fight for Foster, and it wasn't. Jeremy did not just give him the win. He fought tooth and nail for that win. And then unfortunately in his second fight he fought Devin Blythewood and he kicked him, broke his foot, and got knocked out immediately. Very, very, very unfortunate. And I don't like that loss. I would love to see that rematch later on the road. It was really unfortunate for Jeremy that he had broke his foot off the kick. But again, he had surgery. He did rehab. He got back in the gym. And what did he do? Caged under 21. He comes back and he beats Corday Barnes first round, 53-second submission by a fucking key lock. Took him down,
Yeah.
key lock. But he is fighting a monster in Matt Beal.
Yeah, Matt Beal's a monster. I mean, this guy, he is probably, if not the best, at least like top 3 physiques on this card. Physique may mean nothing to you, and that's warranted. I mean, you look at a guy like Daniel Cormier, who probably has one of the worst physiques ever of an athlete, and he's one of the best MMA fighters of all time. So it doesn't mean everything. But I will say this: Matt Beal looks very strong in his training, and in his loss, he looks very strong. He's got a mean 4 that he threw a couple of times, and I am really excited to see him. I want to imagine that when I saw him like 3 weeks ago, and this is a heavyweight fight, I'm gonna guess he'll be pretty under 265 norm. Like, he looked like he might walk around at like 230, 240. And I'll be interested to see what he comes in at on Saturday. But I'll say this to Jeremy. I saw him at Apex about 2 weeks ago, and it's probably the skinniest I've seen him. And he was 2 weeks out from his fight as well. So, props to both of them. And Norm, I know you can talk to this much better than I can. Jeremy's a guy who started his career 0-2. When you're an amateur and you lose once, it's like 50% just quit. Well, it's like 50% quit, and then like the other 50 will try to fight again. And if you lose again, it's like another 50% quit. Nobody really goes 0-2 and continues to keep fighting. Jeremy did. He continued to get better even after, that questionable second loss, of course, and he got what he deserved, and he got that last win not too long ago. So I think he's going to look really good. I remember talking to him, and he told me, he thinks it'll just be his experience that will help him win this fight, and he definitely will be the more experienced fighter in this fight in terms of cage time in the cage, time fighting, actual fights. But Matt Beal, man, I'm like, this guy looks like a psycho. Like, he looks like he's insane. I'm so excited to watch this fight. It has a chance to steal the show because what the fans like are the heavyweight fights, and they like the powerful fights that, they end in knockouts. They like the knockouts. I can very well see this fight ending in a knockout either way. This will be a very exciting fight that could definitely steal the prelims.
Yeah, if I were Jeremy, because I don't know much about Matt Beal, I'm pretty sure I watched the fight that he lost by decision. I am having the hardest time remembering the entirety of that fight. Like how he looked and the nature of the fight, like how his cardio was. But if I was Jeremy, I would be studying that fight. I'd be looking at his cardio. I'd be looking at his gas tank. I'd be looking at his form. I'd be looking at, how long in the first round before he took his first shot. Was he more primarily a wrestler? When he got to the ground, if he got to the ground, how did his jiu-jitsu look? How did his ground game look? Like, I'd be studying all avenues and all aspects of this fighter But if I knew nothing about, like, I had no video and I knew absolutely nothing about Matt Beal, and all I could see is a picture, I would probably just chalk it up to, okay, he's probably stronger than me, especially looking at his physique. You know, sometimes you just see guys and go, that guy's strong. He looks super fucking strong. He's probably stronger than me. Then you got then that's when the analyst starts. That's when you start going, okay, he's stronger than me. How do you beat a strong guy? You know, you make him use his arms. You make his body produce, try to get more oxygen to the muscles. You make him use those muscles. You close the distance. You get in his face. You put your forehead into his chest. You drive him. You make him pummel. You make him fight. You make him defend. You get him tired. Because I don't care how good a shape you look, if you have a lot of muscle, your body's going to demand more oxygen. You make him tired. Okay? So that's the first thing that I'm thinking. He's super strong. You said it yourself, he's got a good fore. I'm staying the fuck away from that.
Yeah.
Right? I'm circling to the left. I'm staying away from his fore. I don't want to even be in range of his fore. I want to get him, I want to get my face buried in his boobs and just bam, right into his chest. And I want to make him pummel and fight for position. I want him standing straight up. I want him, sprawling out, fighting, to defend my takedowns. Like, that's what I'm doing if I'm Jeremy. Now, Jeremy's last fight, that's basically what he did.
Sure.
He pressed the guy up against the cage. He got a good single leg takedown, took him down, got the key lock. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and go on a limb here and say that Matt Beal's his submission defense is a lot better than Jeremy Riley's last opponent. So Jeremy just taking him down and getting a key lock is probably not going to be as easy. And I really hope Jeremy understands that he's probably not just going to go to the ground and just get a submission. He's probably, especially a guy who's strong. Okay, like, take it from me. Like, I like to think I'm a pretty strong guy. And anybody who has grappled me, I mean, they may have ultimately won, in practice and stuff like that. But if you got me in an armbar, or if you try to get me in a key lock or Kimura or anything like that, chances are, if I'm stronger than you, you're not getting it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to muscle right out of it. If this guy is strong, if Matt Beal is as strong as you say he is, then I think Jeremy's going to have a hard time locking in a submission. I personally don't know what Jeremy's game plan is. I really hope that it's not standing in the center of cage and just biting down on his mouthpiece and hoping that I can withstand those punches. I like to think that there's a little bit more game plan involved on the Apex side of things. Again, though, I haven't really gotten into nitty gritty with them about any game plan. So I honestly have no idea. But just analyzing it, that's how I would approach a fight with Matt Beal.
Yeah, Matt Beal fought Ryan Bryant in his first fight. Ryan Bryant, which is like such a fun name to say as well, 2 fights in 7 days. I mean, he had a fight and then fought Matt Beal very, very close. And that fight was just a brawl. It was a lot of this, a lot of takedowns and getting back up. They were both getting hit in the head a lot. But it looked like Matt Beal, his downfall in that fight was probably his cardio. However, the way that I saw them training at Route 250 the day I was there, it was super high pace. Super, okay, you're done, find a new partner, 10 seconds, you're back to drilling. And if I'm Jeremy, I'm still, while Matt Beal is the stronger looking guy, Jeremy's a bigger guy. So as much as me selfishly wanting to see a firefight where I just see these guys, stand in the middle of the cage and see who can knock each other out first, if I'm Jeremy, I'm keeping my distance until I can just see him mess up and get him on the ground. Because this is a guy that I saw struggle with cardio. There's nothing worse than being the bottom guy in a heavyweight fight. There's nothing that will take your cardio more than being the bottom guy in a heavyweight fight. So ultimately, if Jeremy's got good cardio, I said he looked like he was in really good shape 2 weeks ago, then hopefully he can just wear this Matt Beal guy out. Because like you said, Norm, if I'm Jeremy, I don't want to take a bunch of shots. I don't want to try to have a short career. So if he's playing it smart, hopefully that's what he'll do. But selfishly, like I said, I want to see fireworks, and I want to see Matt Beal have these fireworks because, this guy just looks like a beast. So I think this will be, like I said, I think this can steal the show in terms of the prelims.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the good thing that Matt has going for him is that he, his only loss, his only fight, and his only loss was by decision. And I'm sure that at Route 250, they got together and said, "Hey, man, what do you think the deciding factor was in this fight?" And he probably went, "My cardio."
Right.
What do you think they've been working on?
Yeah.
So there's a really good chance that Matt Beal's cardio is 10 times
Yep.
better. I mean, and he had this fight in April. Months of training for this fight. As long as he's in the gym every single day and he's consistent, he's probably 10 times better shape than he was in that fight. So I personally expect to see fireworks in this fight. I am really excited
Well, yeah, he's much
for this
skinnier
fight.
now. In his first fight, and this is no offense, it's a heavyweight fight, so no offense. His belly was kind of hanging over his shorts a little bit. Well, when I saw him at Route 250, mind you, he had a shirt on, but it almost looked like he had abs. And you can have abs as a heavyweight, 100%. It looked like he had abs, Norm. So he's definitely in more of a physical, better shape, which I'm sure translates to his cardio.
Let's move on. Denzel Wallace and Brandon Billiter. We talked a little bit before about Brandon Billiter being replaced by Matt Adams on the commentary table. Why? Because Brandon Billiter took a short notice fight against Denzel Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
I like this fight. I like this fight for Brandon actually. Brandon. You know, Coming off of a loss to Branson Price, who we'll be talking about a little bit later in our main event. But Denzel Wallace, 3-2, coming off of a win against Anthony Morris by decision for the WFC. This was back in February, earlier in the year, and not a bad career for this guy so far. 5 fights. He fought, let's say, Anthony Morris, Joe Corrigan, Luke. I'm not even gonna pronounce the last name. Uh, Blake Jardnick and Logan Barnhart. It just he's got a decent amount of fights. He's got a lot of experience. This is not a bad fighter, and I think Brandon, he's gonna have his hands full. Brandon coming off of 2 losses again, Branson Price and Jacob Scott, both by decisions and both title fights. By the way,
Yep.
I mean, he also beat Jake Zach by decision. He fought and beat Robert Presley by decision. A lot of it looks like the back half of Brandon's career and amateur career has been decision. So cardio, not even gonna question it.
No, I will never question Brandon Belliter's cardio. And I mean, if you break down his style, he's so technical, Norm. He's such a good guy to train with, I'm sure, because he's technical. He's great wrestler. And I was excited to say this. I think he's a very underrated boxer. I think his boxing is really underrated. I think that's because he had to fight Jake Scott and then he had to fight Branson Price, which meant, well, I'm going to have to get pretty good at I'm going to really have to fine tune my boxing if I'm going to fight for a belt and I'm fighting 2 guys that are both decent strikers. So I'm sure he did that. And I mean, if I'm Brandon, I'm coming off 2 back-to-back title losses and I picked up this fight on like a 10-day notice. There's no other reason that Brandon Billiter takes his fight except he's hungry to win. He's got to be hungry to win. So that makes me so excited to see what he'll bring to the table. And I mentioned that Brandon Billiter is so technical. Well, Denzel Wallace is a sprawling and brawling guy. As I mentioned earlier, these guys are scrappy. And scrappy does not mean that they're not technical in any means. But what I do think is that could be good for Denzel or bad for Denzel. And that all depends on what Brandon Belliter's defense is going to look like. Because ultimately, if you don't train with scrappy guys, you struggle against those scrappy guys, even if you are the more technical. And just because you're seeing things you've never seen before. And if you're prepared, well, you're going to see the holes and you're going to see the gaps really fast. You're going to be able to go to your corner and just your coach will hopefully know, look, when he throws this, and that, he's opening himself right there. So it'll be a really good fight. I definitely respect Brandon for taking this fight on short notice, but I know he's in good shape because he's been training with Luke McMurtry because Luke is fighting Branson Price. Brandon fought Branson previously, so they've trained together. So Brandon has been really important to Luke's camp and helping him get ready for the title fight. So yeah, this will be a really good fight. And Denzel, he's a guy that I don't know a lot about. I remember watching his fight versus Joe and thinking he looked really good, and then his last win versus Anthony Morris, split decision, good cardio it seemed, and he's tough. He's tough. These brawling guys are tough, and I really like to see it. So yeah, this will be a good fight for both guys.
Yeah, I didn't see. I haven't watched him fight. So if you're saying he's more of a, if he's a scrappy guy, the problem with scrappy versus technical usually comes down to pacing. And if you get a technical guy like Brandon, Brandon knows how to dictate a pace. He knows how to fight at his pace, and he knows not to get goaded in to your pace. And he showed that when he fought Branson, because Branson is the king of pacing. I mean, every single one of his fights has been a decision victory with Branson. So yeah, Brandon, I said, as technical as he is, as underrated as a boxer he is, he's good on the ground. He can pace this fight. And if you're a scrappy guy and you're just gonna think that you can go out there and just take him down or just knock him out, it's probably not gonna happen. He's gonna circle. He's gonna regain cage control. He's gonna be calm and patient in the clinch. If you take him down, he's going to be calm and he's going to be patient as he's transitioning to different submission attempts and different positioning, more dominant position. He's going to be calm and he's going to dictate the pace. He's not going to burn himself out. He's not going to get. He's not gonna have an adrenaline dump. He's not gonna dump his cardio. Brandon Belter is in good shape, and this is why he took this fight, because he hasn't stopped training. He's been in the gym. I can personally attest that he has been in the gym. I have trained with him. Uh, he's ready for this fight. And if Victory and Terry and Drew felt that Brandon would have had an ounce of loss in this fight, they wouldn't have taken it.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, his coaches and his camp are confident in their ability to win this fight on short notice. But yes, this is gonna be a good fight. I hope it's a good fight. I hope it's not a one-sided fight. Again, I don't know. I don't know him. You know, Wallace as much as I probably should.
So Denzel Wallace was when he fought Joe. If I can maybe bring your memory back, he got the double leg early on the total opposite side of the cage, picked him up, and sprinted across the cage and tried to like slam him. And Joe was able to kind of get his hips out a little bit, but ultimately Denzel took him down. Denzel was on top, looked really good, and got caught in the armbar. So, it shows that Denzel can also wrestle, which is, a good kryptonite to Brandon because Brandon is a good wrestler. So if you're able to wrestle with Brandon, then that forces Brandon to be on the feet, which I did mention he does have that underrated boxing. However, I think he's a much better wrestler. So, yeah, Denzel Wallace, I remember him picking that Joe up with this big double leg, running across the cage, slammed him down. It was really cool. So, yeah, this will be a good fight.
Moving on, we have Jeremiah Slagle and Walker Snowden. Let me see. Walker Snowden, 6 foot, listed, 26 years old, listed, 2-0. And I mean, he fought. I want to say, is it Mahid Ahmad and Octavian Cohen Jr. Now, I don't want to take anything away from Octavian in that win, but this needs to be a step up in competition with Jeremiah Slagle. Jeremiah coming in at 3-1, coming off of a loss against is it Jose Harrell or Josea Harrell? I'm so dumb. But you know what? Okay. this is all right. This is gonna stand out to me. He has a win, a listed win in 2017 against Dan Stevenson.
Mm,
That is huge.
yeah.
Dan Stevenson is a fucking animal. His amateur career. I mean, that guy is a monster. If it's the same Dan Stevenson I'm fucking thinking of, that guy was an animal. Let me click on Dan Stevenson's profile here just to yeah, professional. Yeah, he was like fucking 8-1 or some shit, like 7-1 or 8-1 as an amateur. As a pro, he's 2-4, but I don't mean shit. So him having a win against Dan Stevenson alone, that's just the first name that I saw. That is huge.
Mm.
That because Dan Stevenson he is known for his wrestling, his strength and his wrestling. I don't know if you ever seen Dan. Dan is built like a shit brick house, and he can wrestle, and he is cardio for days. So if he beat him, and he beat him in the first round by TKO, this is going to be a very difficult fight for Walker here.
Yeah, it looks like Jeremiah or it looks like he fought a lot early 2016, 2017 and then struggled to get fights. It looked like his fights kept getting canceled. I'm not sure why, but he looks like he tried to have a fight in 2022, got canceled. 2023 got canceled. So hopefully this fight, I'm pretty sure, will happen, assuming both guys stay healthy and make weight. So I just assume this guy looked really good and has just been training, and he'll probably be much better. Walker, I can talk to a little bit more. Reminds me of like my favorite style of fighter, which is like your Colby Covingtons, your Triple C's. And what I mean by that is like wrestlers who like to strike. And Walker in his last Cage Thunder bout versus Octavian would just like set up, strike, strike, strike. My favorite thing, level change to take your takedown, get him on the ground, and heavy top pressure is what helped him get that fight ultimately. He did it twice. He punched him, level change takedown, did it again, ultimately got the win. So yeah, he looked good. He's 2-0. This will definitely probably be his biggest test yet, and that is no disrespect to Octavian, and I don't even know his first guy he fought. So no disrespect to either of those guys, but yeah, Slagle looked good.
I mean, just to give you a little bit of context, so Jeremiah Slagle's only loss in 2019 was against Josiah Harrell. Harrell is currently 7-0 as a professional lightweight.
Yep.
And finished his amateur career 7-0. He's never lost. And he lost to this guy by a decision. So he didn't go in here and just get his ass kicked against this guy. He took a guy who's essentially 14-0 throughout his mixed martial arts career, 7-0. This guy's probably fighting on a Bellator level or getting ready to do something with the UFC. This guy
he was supposed to fight Jack Della Maddalena.
Yeah,
He was supposed to fight Jack Della Maddalena.
Yeah, so this was his loss right here. This is why this guy is probably having issues finding fights. It's because people who know how to do their homework probably see this shit and go, oh, this guy's probably pretty good. Now, I could be completely wrong, man. I've been known to be an idiot sometimes, but I could be completely wrong. He hasn't fought in like 4 years. Again, we talked about cage rust and ring rust and all that stuff, but like this guy looks like he's going to be a problem.
No, I think he's going to be really good. I mean, if his only loss is to Josiah Harrell, which was supposed to make his UFC debut at like what card was that? I believe it was Volkanovski Rodriguez, which was only like 2 months ago. He was supposed to make his UFC debut. And the other thing that I noticed when I look at his record is he stayed active up until that COVID pandemic, which is always something that is interesting to see there. Now he had the canceled bouts, now he's back. So that shows to me that he was looking to go to a fight. And you're right, Norm. I mean, I hear about it all the time. It's hard. I'm friends with some of the better fighters in Ohio. It's hard to get him fights because people don't want to fight him. So shout out Walker, and Walker is no joke either. Like I said, I mean he's got a really nice style, my favorite MMA style, where they just strike, strike, strike. Look for the level change, get the takedown, and in good ground and pound. So it'll be a good fight. It'll be interesting to see Slago make his not his debut, but his first fight back in a few years.
All right, moving on. We've got Jared Patterson versus Matt Dugan. This has got potential for fireworks. It's been written all over it, man. This is a big fight for Matt Dugan. Jared Patterson is not a fighter to take lightly, and Matt Dugan needs this win to fight for the title, I believe, come December.
Mm-hmm.
I believe if he wins, I believe if Matt wins this fight, he's title eligible for the featherweight belt in December. But he's got a problem in Jared Patterson right now.
Yeah, I mean Matt deserves a shot at that title, assuming he wins this fight because he's looked great. I think, and this is, it's hard to even judge, but in terms of Luke McMurtry, who is fighting for the belt, for the 145 belt, for the main event, it looked like Luke's toughest challenge he had his entire career was Matt Dugan. With that said, that was also one of Luke's first fights. If it wasn't his first fight, I can't remember off the top of my head. It might have been his second fight. So obviously Luke's gotten much better since. But Matt Dugan is good. I'm trying to say he's good. Now you look at Jared Patterson, and I watched him train as well. He's just nice. He's a good fighter coming off back-to-back wins, both or one at his last fight at Cage Thunder. And, we talk about these Route 250 guys. He's one of these guys that's good on the ground, Norm. He's good on the ground. And it'll be a really exciting fight at the 145. It'll be interesting. I am really excited to watch Jared Patterson because I saw him train. And these Route 250, it's so, and Norm, I'm sure you can speak to this too. When you have 6 guys all fighting on the same card, the atmosphere, the attitude in your gym, in every single one of your training sessions is so different because everybody's training for a fight. So everybody wants everybody to get better. You're all training for that same day. So I just know these Route 250 guys are going to come in so ready to fight because they've all been training to fight at this Cage Thunder 22. And then for Matt Dugan, sprawling and brawling guy. Probably one of their best fighters in terms of record-wise, and he's young still. He's 24, so it'll be really exciting to watch him. He looked really good in this last fight too, which was only a month ago. And I've said these sprawling and brawling guys are pretty scrappy. Matt's pretty technical, actually. I would say he's a good technical fighter, and like I've said, scrappy does not mean you're bad. Or bad fighter. It can mean the actual opposite in times.
Right.
But Matt is more of a technical guy. And, yeah, this should be for a title, I believe. Norm, you were right on that.
Yeah, and I mean, like Jared Patterson's record is currently listed at 5 wins, 6 losses. People do not look at that record. Jared is a lot better than what that record is. He started his career in 2016. I remember covering Jared. I mean, I believe back when he was fighting at Evolve. I think he was training at Evolve. My memory serves. I believe he was at Evolve for a little bit, but under John Cook. But he's fought some killers in the amateur division. I mean, he's fought Yoey Rojas. He's fought Canyon Tackett, Clinton Ewing. He's Cody Lewis. He has fought some guys. Some of these losses that he's taken over his career were against legit, title fights and stuff like that. They're against legit, like, animals, man. And this was early in his career. He's better. I mean, he's better now than he was back in 2016, 2017, and now he's under another reputable gym under Andrew Law and a good team. A lot of training partners, a lot of guys pushing him to get him better. This is going to be a hard fight for Matt. This is also going to be a hard fight for Jared as well. That's why I said at the beginning of this that this fight has fireworks in the making. I cannot wait to see who wins this fight because I'm pretty sure whoever wins is going to be fighting for the title at the Civic Center come December. Moving on, we've got Cordell Cheney and Dylan Miller. Dylan Miller is that guy is something else, man. That guy is a different breed of fighter. Um, you know, I've had the opportunity to spar with him on several occasions, and because he's my weight, he fights at the weight class that I was competing in. I sparred with him quite a bit, and this guy has cardio. First off, he has cardio for days, and he purposely pushes the pace until you get tired, and then he just capitalizes. He switches stances very, very frequently, so you have no idea what you're about to get kicked with or punched with. Um, a little different from, like, say, training with Nick Nash, who will essentially, get you to the ground, and that's what you're fighting to not happen. With Dylan, you're not fighting to not get taken down. You're fighting literally to not get knocked out. This guy is coming for you. You're gonna see it. Everyone's gonna see it in this fight. He's gonna be in this guy's face. He's gonna be pushing the pressure. This guy's gonna be walking backwards the entire fight. I 100% guarantee you that Dylan's going to have this guy walking backwards the entirety of the fight until he gets him up against the cage. And once he puts you up against the cage, he's going to tee off. And he's not one of those guys who just wildly tees off and just throws wild punches. He is going to find the opening, and he's going to execute. He's going to hit you hard. I mean, this guy hit me so hard that I thought he fixed my neck. I was like, oh shit, I think my neck, oh nope, still bad. Like, I mean, and that's with 16-ounce gloves. We got 6-ounce gloves on the amateur division here. This guy hits hard. He's long. He's tall. I mean, he's not like 6'4" tall, but he's tall. He's got cardio for days. He is super good at making you feel uncomfortable. And he's really good at putting self-doubt in your mind. And that's a problem when you're trying to overcome and adapt in the middle of a fight. When you feel like you're about to lose, it's the worst feeling in the world in the middle of a fight, and that's what Dylan Miller does. He is going to be in your face, in your face, in your face. He's going to hit you with punches that you didn't even see coming. He's going to make you tired in the first minute, and you're going to start doubting yourself. And the moment that who's he fighting?
Cordell
Cheney. As soon as Cheney figures that out, as soon as he has a moment of self-doubt, the fight's going to be over. And like I said, I don't know Cheney, so I can't really talk about what his skill is in the cage. He can go out there and completely just hit Dylan one time and knock him out, and then I'll be sitting there looking like a jackass, or not.
Yeah, well, Cordell Cheney is a tough guy, Norm. And, if you're saying Dylan Miller's got good cardio, then he's going to have a challenge with Cordell because Cordell has one unanimous decision win, and his last loss was a split decision loss, but it was versus Chris Draghi. And if you can remember that name, that is a 5-year college wrestler.
Yep, I remember the name very well.
Chris Draghi is, he's a tough cookie. He's one of the better, and I really respect Chris Draghi in that he's one of these guys that would take the tougher fight. We're talking about, hard to match opponents. Well, Nick Nash is a hard guy to match opponents with. He fought Chris, and Chris was willing to take that fight. So, yeah, Cordell has fought tough competition, and he's tough. He's very tough, and you almost have to be a light heavyweight. You gotta be willing to take a few punches. You gotta have a good chin. So it'll be exciting. And then, yeah, Dylan Miller has been really good. It's been a while. His last fight was versus Noah Irwin. Noah Irwin's a really good prospect in MMA right now. But I think that the competition, I think Dylan was just a more experienced fighter in that fight. So it's hard to judge Dylan based off that fight. But yeah, he looks really good. They're gonna be similar in height. They'll be similar in weight, I'm sure, in on fight day. So I think this will be a really good fight. And what'll be telling is Dylan Miller's 32, so he's got that older strength
Be
where
careful now.
where Cordell is still 25. He's one of the younger amateurs. So it'll be maybe he'll be faster because of that. I'm not sure. So yeah, this will be a really good fight.
Yeah, I don't see age being too much of an issue. Most guys in mixed martial arts hit their prime in their early 30s, late 20s, early 30s.
Is that right, Norm?
Yeah, that's 100% right. But no, I mean, I mean, not want to shit on any of the guys that fought Dylan Miller in the past, but it definitely seems like this is going to be a step up in competition for Dylan Miller, and that's what you want as an amateur fighter. You want to step up in competition. You got, Dylan has 3 fights. He's 2-0. One of them against Jesse Terwillinger was actually a no contest because of a low blow up against the cage. They petitioned the fight, got overturned.
Yep.
Dylan technically should be 3-0 right now. But yeah, this is going to be a step up in competition, and yeah, this is what you want. If Dylan can win this fight, it's really going to cement himself in the rankings in the light heavyweight division, and that's what you want, and that's what we're all looking forward to see. So I hope that he brings his best. Both fighters, actually, I hope both fighters bring their best, and I hope Cordell brings his best, and they put on a goddamn show. Moving on, we got Anthony McCants and Garrett Hirschberger. This is another one, man. Like this is so Garrett Hirschberger is again another big name in the state, in the rankings. Another Route 250 guy. Really good on the ground. Actually, pretty good with his hands.
Oh yeah.
Not bad with his feet either. From the what was it, the accidental head kick that he had in one of his fights, but he's fighting McCants, and McCants is a young prospect, in the sport right now. So I'm actually really curious to see how this is going to go. I did get an opportunity to go to Apex and talk to Brian a little bit, and that was one of my first things that I brought up. And I was like, "Hey, man, what about this? What about McCants, man? How often is he in the gym?" And it doesn't seem like he's in the gym too often, at least not at Apex, and that is a concern with me. It's a big concern with me. It's not like anybody's talking shit about the guy. It's just a concern. Because when you're fighting MMA and you're fighting especially as an amateur, there's a level of sacrifice that you have to take, and you have to make time. You have to put that time slot over here for mixed martial arts and training. If you don't have the training, you can't just wing it and go in there. Especially, and Anthony is stepping up. I mean, he's got one fight, right?
One fight.
He's 1-0, correct?
Yeah, he made his debut on the last card.
Yeah, he's 1-0.
Or
well,
maybe 2 cards ago.
But regardless, he's only got 1 fight, and he's already taking a step up in competition. Usually, this fight for Anthony shouldn't even happen for another 2 fights, in my opinion. And that's got nothing to do with McCants' ability as a fighter or skill as a fighter. I'm just saying, like, Garrett Hirschberger is at that level where, skill-wise, he's pretty damn good. And like I said, I'm not going to take anything away from Anthony. Anybody can win any fight at any given moment on any given Sunday. But no, I mean, Garrett Hirschberger comes from a very, very reputable gym. He's young. He's hungry. He's fucking 3-0. He's got that one he should be 4-0, but the no contest against Nico Jackson for the illegal head kick. So he should be undefeated 4-0 right now. But I mean, and he's fought guys like Akil Brazier, dude. Like, I mean, that guy, he's got wins. That was his last win. So Anthony's already making a step. He's already taking a step up in competition, and I don't know how serious he's taking it. That's my biggest concern. I just don't know how serious he's taking the fight, and that's not because he doesn't want to take it serious. Maybe his schedule and his time just doesn't permit or allow him to train the way that he's supposed to be training. Now, I could be wrong too. I could have understood Apex when they're talking about that maybe he just hasn't been at sparring, or you know what I'm saying. But I know he wasn't there the day that I was there when I was talking to Brian.
Yeah, AJ McCants. What I know from him is he was a great high school wrestler. I believe he wrestled at Coventry, and I believe he was a state qualifier, or at least went far in districts a couple years. And then he's a street beefs guy, or he's a street fighter guy. And I don't know if that means anything to you guys, but it's weird. And it's hard to tell. And for me to even be serious about entertaining this, I know I'll get clowned already to a certain extent. But you gotta understand, it's just weird because there's guys like Jake Zach, for example, who have a great MMA career right now, who have that background in street fighting. Or let me name one of your guys' personal favorites, Jorge Masvidal, Kimbo Slice. These guys that people are just obsessed with, they have that street fight background. So I mean, clown me all you want, but it means something. Now, I don't think you're wrong in what you've been hearing. I hear the same things that he's not, at he's not training at all, but when he went into his first fight, and I'll say this because he won, and he won impressively, he was one of those guys that told me he wasn't training at a gym. So earlier we mentioned, get in the gym. Well, he was a guy who didn't train at a gym, got a nice guillotine choke first round win, looked very technical, surprisingly, and he did get a win without being in the gym. So maybe it won't hurt him, but the thing is, you're right, Norm. He's fighting Garrett Hirschberger, who's just been really good. And when you fight a guy like Akil Brazier, and Garrett did, he won by unanimous decision, but it was a solid unanimous decision. What I mean by that is he clearly won every round. You don't have to know a lot about scoring to just watch the way that fight went and go, yep, he probably won that round, definitely won that round, definitely won that round. That's what Garrett did. He's 3-0, and he's about to fight AJ. And AJ, who knows? And that makes this fight kind of exciting, too. I mean, you see a young guy like AJ, who's this street fighter, who's a good college wrestler, who, he comes out in the anime gear, listening to with the anime music, doing backflips after his fight. And you see that, and you don't know a lot about him. And then, Garrett Hirschberger is a great striker. He's a Route 250 guy who's one of these really decent strikers who's also good on the ground. So it'll be an exciting fight. It'll be an interesting fight. Um, yeah, I'm pretty excited. And I think another thing that, I hate to say, and I don't want to say it for every fighter, but these I actually won't say any names, but it seems from what I hear, these younger amateurs don't like to go to the gym all the time, Norm. It seems that these younger guys, even if they're great fighters, they're winning, but they're just not in the gym all the time.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on how serious they want to take it, and if it's something that they want to do for the rest of their life. Um, Part of being an elite level athlete is having the not just the physical talent and the ability to do it and be good at it, but you have to have the mental fortitude to actually wake up in the morning and get your ass to the gym. And that's kind of what the difference is. That's what differentiates a lot of elite level athletes and the average athlete. You either have this and you don't have the other, you have that and you don't have the other. The people who have it, those are the guys, those are the one percenters. Those are the ones who make it. So you can be naturally talented all you want, but if you don't have the mindset to wake up and train once or twice a day, or figure out that you gotta have a good team behind you, or you have to invest in yourself, as a fighter, and invest in your recovery, and training is a full-time job, and not just going to the gym for an hour and a half a day, but also making sure that your recovery is in check, your nutrition is in check, that you're still taking time to do road work and training in the morning if you can, or an hour and a half isn't really going to do much.
Hmm.
You can get some technical training in, but that's not going to make you an elite level fighter, man. You gotta do it. You gotta do a lot more. Let's move on to our super heavyweight fight of the night. We've got James Dennis versus R.J. Harris. R.J. Harris coming off of the knockout, the 9-second Cage Thunder KO of the night. Impressive knockout. He is going up against a very hungry, no pun intended, James Dennis, who's coming off of I want to say a 30-second, 20-second win or something like that by guillotine choke against Dalton. Um, yeah, man, this fight is going to end one of two ways. It's either going to end in a first round knockout or submission. First round knockout or submission, or it's going to go all 3 rounds. And if it goes all 3 rounds, because both guys' cardios took a shit early, because one was trying to knock out the other too much, and they dumped their adrenaline and they just dumped their cardio, and it's just going to be a very long and boring fight. Or we're going to get fireworks in the first 30 seconds and someone's getting caught. RJ Harris is known for his tough man fighting antics where he's just in your face, throwing punches. He's very tall. He's a very big individual.
Yeah.
James Dennis, on the other hand, is also a big individual, slightly shorter than RJ, but also hits just as hard. What do you think the keys to victory for this fight is for either of those fighters?
Yeah, I'll give you keys to victory for both guys for sure. RJ Harris, number 1, West Virginia tough man champion. So that does mean something. That's a little more than being a glorified street fighter. That's a legit thing. And they breed him tough in West Virginia. So to win that, it really does mean more than you might think it does. He's 6'6", he's 24, and now he's transitioned into MMA. His first fight in MMA is so hard to tell because it was just so clearly just gonna go to him. It's like it was so he just when he walked in.
It's a very one-sided fight.
Yeah, when he walked in, everybody knew. His nickname, Norm, is the Hammer. If he wants to win, he needs to keep it on the feet and knock James Dennis out. That's how he has to win. And I think he can do that. 100% I think he can do it because that is how much longer he's going to be. We don't measure reach at the amateur, unfortunately. At least I don't have that knowledge, but I know he's going to be longer. You can just tell he's going to be longer, and he's taller. So we do know that much. He is taller. So he's just got to come at him. And what I noticed from watching his boxing matches is his cardio is it's not that it's bad. It's just almost that he looks slower in those fights. And then it's hard for me to tell how his MMA training's been because that first fight is hard to judge off of. But I'm sure, him fighting James, I'm sure he knows that he will have to step up his cardio. And James, shout out to my girlfriend. She's like, "Oh, James, is that the Viking-looking guy? Is that the Viking one?" So yeah, that's James, man. And James, every time I've interviewed him, and I've interviewed him since his first fight. I've covered his whole career. He always says, "I'm so excited to show off my striking. I'm so excited to show my striking to prove that I'm a striker." And then he just keeps getting these like easy ground and pound wins where he takes him down or like gets ground and pound, which by the way, in case you really don't understand, at the super heavyweight level in the amateur state of Ohio, because I can really only speak for that because that's what I know, it doesn't take a lot for the referee to stop that fight really fast for ground and pound because these refs understand these are amateurs that hopefully still want a big career ahead of them and that they can get seriously hurt because they are super heavyweights, so they'll stop it quick. So my key, if I'm James, is James Dennis, and maybe you watch the promo video that I had where I interviewed him. He tells me he wants to strike, and I want to see his striking because I think he does deserve to prove that. And what a worthy opponent to prove your striking other than RJ Harris, which is a guy who, seems to be a really good striker. He's going to be strong. But ultimately, if I'm James, I'm looking for legs. I'm looking to get on top of him, and I'm looking for the ground and pound or maybe even a submission because that one of the weaknesses to being lankier on the ground is if you're on bottom, it's easier to grab limbs because those limbs are so long. So maybe James looking for something like that, but ultimately I want to see what James thinks is best. I don't know what's best for him. If he says he wants to show his striking, then that's what I want to see. And I want him to prove that he is an elite level striker. And I watched him train with you, Norm. I watched him strike with you. You're in that promo video where he's striking, and he looks great. He really does. But personally, if it's me and you ask me for my keys for James, RJ's a tall guy, so if you can get his legs, he'll fall. He's a heavy guy, so he'll definitely fall. And just get on top of him and ground and pound, because those refs will stop the ground and pound early.
Yeah, 150% agree with you. That is the key to victory for James. I'm not saying that James is not able to, to knock him out or anything like
me
that.
either.
But the last thing that you want to do is try to prove a point. That's how people lose fights. I want to prove a point. I want to show everybody how good my striking is. That's how people lose. You have to establish a game plan based around how your opponent is. RJ Harris is a tough man guy. He's going to be in your face. He's going to push the pressure. He's going to make you feel uncomfortable. He's going to get inside your bubble. And the whole time he's going to do it, he's going to be throwing his hands. He's got very heavy hands. He's a very big guy. It doesn't take a genius to know that he's heavy-handed, which means every punch with a 6-ounce glove is going to hurt. It's going to do damage. It's going to cut. It's going to bruise. The last thing that you want is somebody just running at you, throwing their hands, even if it's not technical. Even if there are people out there that are looking at RJ going, he's not a technical striker. He's a tough man striker. He's a wild striker. He's an inexperienced brawler, as you will. Those are dangerous fighters if you don't know how to fight them. I agree with you 150%. The key to victory for James in this fight is to get him up against the cage, grab that snatch single, dump him, get on top of him, ground and pound. That's how you get it. Take a 300-pound, 6'6" guy, and you tree topple him. And then you get on top of him, and you use your heavier frame. You sit on top of him, you drop your hips, and you make him wear himself out trying to get back to his feet. He gets back to his feet, you dump him again. You keep dumping him until he can't breathe anymore, and then you just punch him in the face until the referee stops it. If you want to win and you want to have an easy fight, do that. If you want to stand toe-to-toe with a guy who's 300 pounds, 6'6", and just punch, it's the percentage of winning and losing is going to tilt.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you're going to. So now I'm not saying that he's going to lose if he stands in the center of the cage and just toe-to-toe. I'm just saying you're going to accumulate more damage and you're at a higher risk of losing because of that. I'll never say that you're going to lose if you do this or do the other. I'm just saying the percentage of winning and losing is going to drastically change based on how you decide that you take this fight. If you get a guy who's primarily dominant on the ground and he's got all of his wins by submission, it's like Nick Nash. I'll use Nick Nash as an example. He's got all of his wins except for his last one where he lost by decision, were by submission, right? So that's how Nick fights. If Nick wants to prove a point that he's a good striker and he stands in the pocket, it's going to turn into what it was with James Ritchie, where James Ritchie, right?
Yep.
They were just punching each other repeatedly in the face, and you didn't know. It was like one punch could have ended it for either side. That's what the fans want to see. Don't get me wrong. That's what I want to see.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see James Dennis and RJ Harris stand toe-to-toe, strap them in the center of the cage, and just throw fucking haymakers until somebody falls. But if you want to win, there's a way to do it. If you don't want to do it that way, do it the hard way. I have a feeling that James is going to do it the hard way at first until he has to revert to the other way. I think that's what's going to happen. If I were to predict this, not the fight or the winner or the outcome, if I were to predict this, I think James is going to strike with him. And if he is not on the receiving end that he wants to be, if he's not on the end, you know what I'm saying? If he's not winning the striking battle, I think he goes back to what he knows and he's going to take him down. I think he takes him out 100%. He dumps him. He wins the fight. He gets out of there and he fights another day.
Yeah, and let me say this, the narrative that maybe I've created with James wanting to strike more, he means his kickboxing. And that actually is really important in this fight because, well, obviously, the fight will start on the feet. All fights start on the feet. And for him to keep good distance is kickboxing. But not only is that important, but you're fighting a taller guy that ultimately you are going to want to take down. So certainly there is something to be said that if James can protect his head well, if he is able to, withstand and avoid those headshots, that kickboxing, certain leg strikes versus a taller guy really beating up his legs and then looking for a takedown is important. And matter of fact, James Dennis throws hard kicks. So I wouldn't be surprised if James was
Oh
able
yeah,
to kick him hard enough to
I
where
know.
I just saw, yeah, to where I just see RJ fall. Literally, I would not be surprised if I see that. So there is definitely something to be said to where if he wants to show that kickboxing more, there is something to it. But if it's me personally, I don't even want to try to damage his legs. I want to just get him on the ground as fast as I can because you know what James has shown in his fights is that he can take the back. Like he'll take you down enough to get on your back.
Mhm.
And when you're at super heavyweight and you got a big guy on your back hitting you in the head, even if you're covered up, it's tough. And those
Yeah,
refs will
fight's
stop
over.
it. Those refs will stop it. And the fans will get upset about that. But you got to understand, this is a 305-pound dude, or plus, that's hitting you in the head at an amateur level. It's going to stop. And I agree with the refs on that. It's not the UFC. So,
The leg kicks, I agree 100% with the leg kicks too, because like if you look at the fight against Chuck Lamp and George Pointer, George was actually projected to win that fight, and Chuck went in there and just started just rocking George's
yeah.
legs, and it completely took his legs out. George ultimately ended up losing that fight. But I think there's a time and place if James wanted to do a lot of leg work in that fight, and it's gonna be when RJ gets tired and when
Mm-hmm.
he slows down. I think at the beginning of the fight, RJ is gonna be really in his face and not giving James a lot of room to breathe or room to throw those leg kicks. So there's a very good chance that if James isn't careful, he'll try to throw a leg kick at the wrong time as RJ is stepping in for a punch, and it could set up James for a nasty hit. Like he goes to throw a leg kick as he's coming in. Boom, he takes the shot, and I mean you got to wait until RJ is kind of slowed down a little bit. You got to wait till he's tired. Maybe take him down a couple times, let him back up, or as the fight progresses, maybe in the later second, early third round, start working in the leg kicks. Or once you realize as a fighter that he's no longer rushing you and putting a lot
Mm-hmm.
of pressure on you, and he's more standing straight up, his hands are dropping, he's taking big breaths, all that diaphragm, all of it opens up. Start rocking the leg kicks, start rocking the body shots, the teep kicks, start unloading everything you can because you're going to win the fight. Then that's once you realize that, that's when you need to start unloading that. But at the beginning of the fight, I think James definitely needs to stay away from throwing kicks.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Let's go with Luke Chokin versus Nick Lute. This is a title fight. This is a flyweight title fight, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah.
And these guys, Nick Lute just came in here and he beat Dylan.
Dylan Bush.
Yeah, Dylan Bush. And it was a good scrappy fight at the beginning. It looked like it was gonna go either way at first, and then Nick Lute kind of got the better
I,
dominant position.
yeah,
And then
I actually even think Dylan was winning the majority of that fight. I had him rounds 1 and 2. I had Dylan winning. And Nick, the heart on this guy. I was gonna say kid, but he's like old enough to where he could be my dad. And that's no disrespect to Nick. Um, but the heart on this guy. I mean, it's incredible. His heart's almost as big as he is. Literally, he's like 5'3". Um, and he was able to just be so tough all the way to the end to get that win. And yeah, Dylan is no joke. Don't let Dylan Bush's record, say what he is as a fighter because he's much better than a 2-2 fighter compared to other 2-2s I've
And I
seen.
think a lot of Dylan's problem is more mental than it is skill or physical. And in mixed martial arts, a lot of guys go into a fight and their mentality is really bad. It's not, it's not sitting well. Or he goes in there and he thinks he's going to lose, or he goes in there with the mindset of, I can't lose.
Mm-hmm.
And it puts a lot of unnecessary anxiety and stress on the fighter. And that's, you don't want to be on the end of that.
Yeah, no doubt. You do not want to be on the end of that. But ultimately, the Gremlin, Nick Lute, he did look good the whole fight too. It's not when I say I had Dylan in the first few rounds, I don't mean like because he was so much better. I just mean that's how I looked at it. But Nick's good. He's good on the ground, and don't let that height deceive you. And by the way, there won't be much of a height difference in this fight. It's 5'3" to 5'6", I think, which is not like crazy at all for flyweight. And yeah, Nick looked good. He took some years off because he had children. He became a dad. So he took like 6 or 7 years off, came back, got his debut win. Now he's fighting for a belt. He trains so hard. I'm talking about a gym where Hunter Watt, we're talking future UFC fighter Hunter Watt, Andrew Law, one of the best Ohio pros, one of the best Midwest pros, rather, in this gym full of these great fighters. Nick Luke, the day I was there, was the hardest training fighter in that gym. 100%. He was training harder than anybody else. He was training like he wanted to get a belt. With that being said, when I was at Apex watching Luke train, he was one of the hardest training guys in that gym as well. And Luke is a pretty decent fighter. I've watched a little more of his fights, and that's only because it's hard to find Nick Luke's fights on the internet. I have a hard time finding his older fights, but I haven't had much of a problem finding Luke's fights. And Luke just looks like a guy who could be a pro. Like, he fights like a guy who could be a pro, and he's an amateur. He's really good. He also took some time off. He's taken 2 years off. But when I talked to Luke, and the promo and the interview video should be out tomorrow, hopefully, for this fight as well. Or, well, I don't know when this podcast will come out, but it'll be out this week, and you'll see Luke in that video, and he talks about just wanting to have fun. And when you talk about mentality, I think that's important. And not just having fun, like, oh, let's have fun, hitting each other in the face. But it means he's not putting a lot of pressure on himself anymore. And that'll be interesting to see in somebody who's been a good 7-5 fighter in the state of Ohio. He's 26 years old. 7-5, 26 years old.
Four of those fights have been for titles.
Yeah, he fought for a lot of titles. So it'll be really interesting to see. I know that Forged in Ohio had just had him as a guest, and I will be listening to that as well to hear, what he kind of has to say about his career and going into this fight. This fight, Norm, I can't break down technically because when I look at Nick, it's just this guy who's got the biggest heart, and he looks like when he trains he can do whatever he wants. He strikes like his height doesn't matter. It's like the short guy syndrome, Norm. You strike like you don't care.
Wait, why do I know?
Because you're short, Norm.
Why do I know?
you strike like you don't care that height matters. You fought Kyle, who was much taller than you, and you striked him. The way you went in, it was like, well, if I'm going to strike him, I got to get close. I'm not going to be able to hit him unless I get close. That's how Nick fights, and it's great. And then Nick on the ground is just excellent. And that's ultimately what helped him get that win over Dylan. He was able to get the submission, and, he was able to show that grappling, that Route 250. So I'm really excited to see him fight, and then Luke as well I'm really excited to see fight. I don't really have a, key to victory for either guy. I imagine they're, at flyweight, it will go to decision 100%, and in a championship bout, I don't see it ending in a finish. So, you gotta win rounds.
I can see it ending in a finish, and it's gonna be by a submission if it is 100%. I mean, most of Luke's fights he's won or lost by submission. I think of his wins.
No, he's got some decision wins in there, some split.
Well,
decisions.
he's got some, but I think most of his wins were submissions.
Triangles, rear naked.
I think this fight's gonna go to the ground.
Yeah.
And it's going to come down to, like, whose cardio is better and whose ground game is better. I'm actually really curious to see how Luke's game is going to be now that he's switched gyms, too. I want to see if that's going to make a bit of difference. I'm really looking forward to it because I believe he's at Apex now.
Yep.
And I believe he was at Aries. So I believe he had made that swap. And I'm really curious to see how, if that made any bit of difference at all. But Luke's coming off of a loss, so...
Well, you mentioned Apex way earlier that they're primarily a striking gym, and I would agree with you. So, Luke being somebody who is great on the ground, looks for the submission, he should just be the most well-rounded he's ever been, right?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, theoretically, he should be.
Yeah.
So, and then let's finish off this podcast talking about our main event: Luke McMurtry versus Branson the One Price. This is this is gonna be a banger of a fight, man. I haven't really been able to kind of put my finger on this one yet. So you got Branson, who is the undefeated reigning Cage Thunder bantamweight champion, jumping up to featherweight, to a bigger weight class, fighting Luke McMurtry, who I believe is also undefeated. Correct?
Yeah.
He is also undefeated.
4-0.
And again, for a title, Branson Price trying to be champ, double champ. I believe he's going to try to go pro after this. I believe this is a big reason why he took a fight at welterweight as quickly as he did. This fight is going to be very interesting for me. I know Branson's been, he's a strong guy. I know he fights at bantamweight, but he is of featherweight strength. He walks around at like 160, and I know Luke walks around probably at 170, 175. But Branson, the best way that I can describe him is that he's like quicksand. If you give him a leg, he's going to take it, and the more that you give him, the harder it's going to be to get out of it. He has proven that in every single fight that he's had. Everybody knows how to beat Branson. That's not a debate. You know what I'm saying? Like, everyone knows what they need to do in order to defeat him. The problem is that they can't do it. That's the issue. And he's great cardio. Surprising, he's not a bad striker. I think he struggles a little bit with overcompensation. I think he doesn't, and I don't want to say he's afraid, but I think he overcompensates, and I think he kind of paces the fight a little too slow, and he's afraid to kind of let his hands go a little bit. Maybe he's too conservative. I think that's the word. That's the word that I'm looking for. I think he's a little too conservative with his striking. I think he holds back a lot. Some guys will look at him and go, he hasn't been able to finish a fight. He has a problem with finishing a fight, and that's not going to translate over too well on the professional side of things. But some people also say that he hasn't really fought a lot of good guys, but I will take that back. I mean, you got to look at who he's fought recently too. He has fought some good guys. Even he recently fought Brandon Bilter. That was a good step up in competition as well, and he beat him. Then there are some people say that he lost to Jake Zach. But, I mean, Jake, he used an illegal move, toe hold. You're not allowed to do it in amateur. Well, it's going to be done to him a professional, so why? Yeah, I get it. But he's not trying to actively defend against that in an amateur fight because he's, in his mind, it's a legal move.
Correct.
Like I said, though, Branson is very strong. He's a very hard worker. His mind is way different than any mixed martial arts fighter on the amateur and professional level that I've ever seen before. He is very, very mentally strong. He's a very hard worker, and he is strong, and he's a good wrestler. Not a bad striker either, so he can get in those matches. Luke McMurtry, he is a good striker, and he's a good jiu-jitsu guy. I would say I think Luke is a better jiu-jitsu guy than Branson, if I were to put money on it. But I don't know who's the better wrestler.
That's tough.
That's a very, very tough one to make, and I think that is going to be the difference in this fight. I mean, if I were to put money on the fight, I'd bet it ends in decision. Just because every single one of Branson's fight has ended in decision. But again, though, like if Luke, the key to victory for Luke is very simple: out wrestle Branson. If you can out wrestle him, you'll win. If at any point in time you can transition Branson out of a dominant position, so let's say Branson takes Luke down and Luke elevator sweeps him, and now he's on full mount, I can almost guarantee you that Branson's first instinct, because I don't think he's really been put in that situation very often in an actual fight, he's going to belly. And that would be an opportunity for Luke to sink into hooks, flatten him out, and get a rear naked. Luke's jiu-jitsu is really good. He gets him down. He throws up a triangle. or gets him in an armbar. Goes into a triangle, transitions to an armbar. I think that Luke's submission transitioning is very good, and it's going to transition very well. It's going to translate very. It's going to translate over to this fight very well. But if Branson could defend the submissions, I think Luke's in trouble. And if he can't out wrestle Branson, I think Luke's in trouble.
Yeah.
Now I know Luke. You know, Luke was saying. I watched your interview, and I remember him saying that you know, Branson's never been hit by someone as hard as I punch. Uh, I've punched Branson a lot, so I can tell. Like, Branson is the guy who would like we would tie up, and I would start landing liver shots on him, and he would just tell me to keep landing them. Punch me harder, punch me harder. I need to condition my body. I'm like, yeah, dude, that's not the way it works, guy. I'm not gonna fucking rupture your liver because you think it's gonna condition. You know, that kind of thing. He can take punches. He can take hits. I can personally attest to that. So I'm really curious. Like, and I purposely, I don't know Luke's game plan, and I think I purposely did that. Like, I never really inquired about it because I have trained with both guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm friends with both fighters, and I never wanted to put myself in a situation where I had to like tell one or the other, like, "Hey, man, this is this is homeboy's fucking game plan. Oh, hey, this is homeboy's game plan. This is what you should." I never wanted to be put in that situation, so I just kept myself on the outside, and I kept it open for speculation. This is going to be a very fun fight to watch, and I'm really curious. I'm more curious. I will say this: I'm more curious to see how Luke is going to fight him. Because I kind of know how Branson's going to fight him. Because I've seen every single one of his fights. I want to know how Luke is going to adapt and overcome during this fight. And I want to see how his wrestling holds up against Branson's. That's going to be the difference in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, so you look at it on paper, Luke McMurtry is the second-ranked Ohio amateur featherweight currently. And you look at Branson, and he's the number one ranked bantamweight in the state of Ohio, and they're both undefeated. I think you bring a great question saying, I wonder how Luke is going to take this fight. My answer to why you ask that question is because Luke has always just looked like the better fighter in every single one of his fights. Mind you, Luke is one of these guys that always has taken up a step in competition. He went from Matt Dugan to Breyer, Mr. CEO Cadle, to Dylan Davenport. So he always took a step up, and it's like he never lost a round, Norm. It feels so confident to go into your corner knowing that you're winning. And it's like your coaches, whether, I don't know what his Terry tells him or not, but knowing whether they're telling you or not, hey, you're winning right now, keep doing this, or keep doing this, or start doing this. Luke hasn't really looked really challenged in his fights. The reason why it's interesting to see what he'll do is because, number one, they're both wrestlers. So it's like, what are they going to do? Who's going to take down the other? Whose takedown defense is going to look better? How are they going to take down one another? It'll start on the feet, and it's because he's fighting the number one bantamweight. Branson is huge at 135. I remember when he was at 140, or he was like 145, and I was like, oh, man, you got to be really close to weight. You know, he had his shirt off, he was sweaty. I'm like, man, you got to be close to weight. He's like, no, I got 10 more pounds. I mean, the guy has an 8-pack. He needed 10 more pounds. So this will be the strongest that Branson's ever been in a fight, in a cage, because he will be that extra 10 pounds, which will, be interesting to see how Luke can take that power. Man, it's such a good fight, and I'm with you, Norm. I'm good friends with both of these guys, so it's hard to say too much. But what I will say is, if I'm Branson, I agree. I think it will go to a decision. If I'm Branson, I want to take the first round because I want to see what Luke does when he's losing, because Luke genuinely never really looks like he's lost a round. Arguably lost a round in his first fight, or his second fight versus Matt Dugan, but that's it. Like, he really has been able to go in. So, like, as a fighter, when your confidence first just gets humbled, it's such a insane experience, I'm sure. And I don't know if Luke's experienced that in a fight. Maybe he has at the gym because he trains really tough guys, and maybe that's enough, but I don't think he's had it in a fight. So if I'm Branson, I'm just trying to be like, hey, look, guy, this is me. This is what you have to deal with for 2 more rounds now. And if I'm Luke, I want to wrestle Branson and say, oh, you're a good wrestler, Branson? Watch what I'm able to do. And scare him with that submission threat. It's not that I'm just a good wrestler who can take you down, Branson. I north-south choke people out at the amateur level, and I want to threaten him with that. And so it's really interesting. And the thing about Branson is, like, he's, like, not even in his prime right now, and he's 32. He's like, when his pro career, he's going to be so good. And Luke is just getting better and better, too.
And Branson, dude, he is, when he gets a hold of you, he is so hard to get away, man. That's what he's like, quicksand, dude.
Yeah.
He latches onto you, and because of his strength, it's so hard to get. I mean, nobody can really get away from him. Like I said, the game plan's simple: just beat him. People know how to beat him. I mean, hell, Victory. He's fought 3 Victory guys.
Correct.
They know how to beat Branson. It's a matter of, do they have the skill to do it the night of the fight? That's all it comes down to. That's all it is. There's no rhyme or reason. Can Luke out-wrestle Branson in this title fight? If he can, it is going to be a very difficult fight for Branson, I think.
Yeah, it'll be very difficult for Branson. I do think, and I believe this, and I've told Brandon this, so this isn't a surprise to him if he's listening. I do think that Branson did win that fight in the split decision fight. I think it did go Branson's way. I can't remember the rounds that I had, but I remember I did have it scored for Branson in that split decision win. But you talk about the key to beating Branson's simple. It's there. It's not simple, but you know it. And Luke was able to train with Brandon Billeter this entire camp. So hopefully, Luke has an idea of what he's going to have to do because, his number one training partner has been the guy who was really, really close to beating Branson.
Yeah, and he does. I've talked to Luke. He knows what he needs to do. And everything that I've said right here, right now, I've already said to both Branson and Luke.
Same, yeah.
Yeah, so, this is nothing new. I've actually had the same conversation with these guys already because that's just kind of what I do anyway. I like to talk to people about shit like that, and I like to analyze fights, and I like to analyze fighters. But, yeah, it's God, I cannot wait for this fight. This fight is going to be awesome to watch. I'm really looking forward to seeing the next step in either one of these fighters' careers. It just sucks that one of them is going to get that L, One of them is going to get that loss, and one of them is going to have to take a step back. And it's unfortunate that that's kind of the position. But that's the business that we're in, right? So
yeah, and the stakes of this fight. Luke has been fighting for a belt. His whole career, he's been fighting to try to get this belt. Because at first, you listen to the video I made, he talks about, well, I didn't even, think I could be a good fighter. I just started fighting. I turned out to be a good fighter. Now I'm fighting for a belt. It's like, the last time I interviewed him, he's like, yeah, I want to fight for a belt. Now he's fighting for a belt. Branson's already got a belt. Right. Branson's fighting to be the double champ going into his pro career. You know how big that looks going into your pro career, saying, hey, I was champion at featherweight and bantamweight. I'm the number 1 bantamweight in the state of Ohio, and I just beat the number 2 featherweight in the state of Ohio. So both the stakes couldn't be higher. They're both undefeated. They're both fighting for just insane reasons. And it's all at the amateur level, too, which is, so awesome to just see all of this happening at Cage Thunder. So, yeah, I'm very excited. And I'm really sad that I have to see one of these guys lose. But
yeah, no, I feel you, man. All right, so we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks for joining us in this card rundown. August 12th in Akron, Ohio at the Chaparrals Community Center for Cage Thunder 22. headlined by Luke McMurtry and Branson the One Price. Make sure you head on over to our website at cagethundermma.com. You can order the pay per view there. You could also click on the ticket link and see if there's any more general admission. You could also take your chances the day of the fight. If you get there a little early, you might be able to get some tickets in hand for GA. Make sure to check out our social media platforms on Instagram at Cage Thunder MMA, Facebook, Cage Thunder One, and our YouTube channel where this podcast will be uploaded, as well as Cage Thunder clips, future and past MMA shows and events, interviews, promotional interviews, and make sure you like our page at facebook.com for any updates on tickets, availability, and any future and past news updates. Thanks for all for joining us. Until next time.